I thought moving into my dream home would be the start of freedom, but the moment I unlocked my front door, I realized my family had been planning to take it from me all along. The paper grocery bag slipped from Emery Vaughn's fingers before her mind could fully process the scene unfolding in her cottage. The jar of marinara shattered against the pale tile floor, splashing vibrant red across the pristine surface like a violent warning. For 3 heartbeats, she stood frozen, keys dangling from her hand, staring at the 2 figures who had invaded her sanctuary, her mother and her sister. Her cottage, her carefully chosen home. The address she had deliberately kept secret. "What are you doing here?" Emery's voice was hollow, distant, almost foreign to her own ears. Vanessa Caldwell, measuring tape stretched taut between her fingers, turned abruptly, her expression flashing surprise before settling into a familiar, irritating entitlement. "Emery, you're home early." Her voice dripped casual familiarity. Caroline Bennett, Emery's mother, straightened from where she'd been rearranging the sofa and armchair, creating a configuration Emery despised. "We thought you'd be at work until 5, she added, her tone carefully neutral. "That doesn't answer my question," Emery said, stepping cautiously around the growing puddle of sauce. Her shoes stuck slightly to the floor. "How did you get in here?" "Oh, I had a key made yesterday when I stopped by to congratulate you," Caroline replied breezily, as if it were nothing more than a simple gesture. The memory hit Emery immediately, her mother asking to use the bathroom during a brief visit, leaving her purse behind in the hall. At the time, it had seemed innocuous. Now it was an undeniable violation. "You took my keys and copied them? Without asking?" The tremor in Emery's voice betrayed more than she intended. "Don't be so dramatic, honey," her mother said, fluffing a throw pillow with exaggerated care. "We're just seeing how to make this work for everyone." "Make what work?" Emery's words came out sharp, clipped, though the full thought didn't leave her mouth because a terrible clarity had settled in her chest. This was no accident. The intrusion, the entitlement, it was all part of a long, calculated pattern. Childhood memories crashed into her mind with relentless force. Vanessa's 11th birthday, a lavish backyard carnival with a hired clown, compared with Emery's meager celebration that same year in the living room, a store-bought cake, and a quiet dismissal. The pattern had never stopped. Now, seeing them in her home, the realization landed like a physical blow. They had been planning this, orchestrating access to her life before she even had the chance to assert herself. "This is my home," Emery said, each word etched in ice. "Not yours. Not ours. Mine." She crossed to Vanessa and snatched the spare key from her hand. Vanessa's fingers clenched reflexively before releasing it. "You can't be serious about living here alone," Vanessa said, feigning concern, her forehead creasing in practiced sympathy. "This place has 3 bedrooms. The kids need space," Vanessa added, voice sharpened with manipulative certainty. "Your housing situation is not my problem," Emery replied evenly, a steadiness she hadn't known she possessed. "After everything they'd done for her?" Caroline's eyes widened dramatically. "Your sister's children need bedrooms. Family helps family, Emery. You know that." The weight of obligation pressed down like a vice. A lifetime of expectations, sacrifices she'd been conditioned to make for Vanessa. But the tremor in her hands faded as clarity surged. "You have exactly 2 minutes to leave before I call the police," Emery said, pointing firmly toward the door. "You wouldn't dare," Caroline hissed. 1 minute, 50 seconds, Emery countered. And then silence, broken only by the slam of the front door as they left, rattling the windows in their departure. The deadbolt clicked into place with a satisfying finality. 20 minutes later, the phone rang. Emery stared at the screen. Richard Bennett. Her father's voice boomed through the receiver. "What the hell are you doing?" "Your mother is in tears. You're tearing this family apart with your selfishness." Emery said nothing, scrubbing the stubborn marinara stain from the tile. She had heard it all before. The guilt, the demands, the carefully orchestrated manipulation. Not anymore. Later, a Facebook notification brought the truth into blinding clarity. Vanessa had posted pictures from 3 weeks earlier, her children crowded into a single bedroom, a caption praising the blessed expansion plan. They hadn't stumbled into her life. They had been planning to take it all along. Emery's stomach turned as she read a forwarded message mistakenly sent from her father. "Don't worry about Emery's tantrum. She'll give in once you're settled. She always does." 3 words. 3 words that had shaped her entire existence. She always does. The following day, an invitation arrived. A family dinner, their attempt at reconciliation, or manipulation, clearly premeditated. Emery arrived to find the table set, her chair intentionally isolated from the cluster of Caroline, Richard, and Vanessa. Across the table, documents appeared, listings for houses near Vanessa's children's school, notes in their handwriting, plans for Emery's property, as if she had no right to it. I mean Emery, Caroline said, her practiced smile strained. "We've found the perfect solution." Emery's throat tightened as Richard added, "We've already spoken with your bank." Her voice cut through the room like ice. "You contacted my bank? Without asking me?" "Preliminary discussions." Caroline waved her concern away like a fly. "Nothing final." Vanessa chimed in with saccharine concern about furniture, bunk beds, and playrooms. Every word, every gesture was a deliberate attempt to manipulate, control, and claim what belonged solely to Emery. After years of living as the compliant, accommodating sister, Emery had finally reached a breaking point. The patterns were unmistakable now, visible in every detail of their behavior. And for the first time in her life, she would not surrender. "I'm watching," she said, voice steady and cold. "And I'm not helping. Not this time." Ignoring their calls, their emotional ploys, Emery walked out, her resolve solidifying with each step. She would no longer be a pawn in a family game she had never agreed to play. By the time she reached her car, the texts and calls flooded her phone. She switched it to silent, a small but symbolic act of control. The house was hers. The life she had built was hers. And for the first time, the word freedom tasted real. Yet, a nagging awareness lingered. This was only the beginning. The next morning, Emery woke to the sunlight streaming through her cottage windows, the smell of basil and rosemary from her tiny garden drifting in. For a fleeting moment, she felt peace, a rare luxury since the previous week's chaos. But it didn't last. Her phone buzzed incessantly with texts and missed calls. Vanessa had sent a flurry of desperate messages, alternating between fake concern for her children and thinly veiled threats about family obligations. Richard and Caroline had begun forwarding her work emails, copying her in on conversations about supposed emergencies. Every ping was a calculated test, probing for weakness. Emery blocked notifications for the day, focusing instead on methodical preparations. She changed all her locks, installed security cameras at every entrance, and set up alerts for anyone approaching the property. She compiled a detailed folder of the family's intrusions, from unauthorized keys to manipulated bank records, every attempt at coercion meticulously documented. It was during the installation of a new camera near the side entrance that she caught the first live attempt. Vanessa's SUV pulled into the driveway at an angle meant to avoid being seen from the street. Caroline followed behind, their faces masked with feigned smiles. Emery didn't hesitate. She dialed the police, calmly explaining the trespass in progress. Within minutes, officers were at the door, and her mother and sister were escorted off the property, protesting loudly but futilely. The confrontation left Emery shaken, yet strangely empowered. For the first time, she felt the sharp clarity of self-preservation. They had been trying to manipulate her for years, but the script was broken. She wasn't the same obedient, guilt-ridden daughter they had controlled since childhood. By midweek, Emery realized their attacks had evolved. It wasn't just the house. They were encroaching on her social and professional life. A GoFundMe page appeared, posted by Vanessa using Emery's image without permission, claiming Emery was in financial distress and asking for donations to support the family emergency. The campaign had hundreds of sympathetic responses, friends of friends offering money, prayers, and moral judgment. Emery immediately contacted the platform, reporting unauthorized use of her image. By the next morning, the page was taken down. But the audacity of the act left a bitter taste. They were weaponizing public opinion, hoping to corner her into submission. At work, the tension followed her. Vanessa had called, claiming a family emergency, requiring Emery's immediate presence, though she had just checked on her children's lunch schedules via text. Emery's colleagues quickly learned to intervene. Marcy from accounting physically intercepted Vanessa at the front desk, and 2 co-workers flanked her during lunch when Vanessa tried a face-to-face ambush in the parking lot. Emery began to realize that while her family disregarded boundaries, her friends and allies respected them without hesitation. Even romantic possibilities began to feel different now. Eli Turner, a fellow engineer who had always been hesitant to speak up in meetings, now seemed to mirror Emery's newfound confidence. At a team session, when a procedural flaw threatened the project, Eli hesitated. Emery interrupted smoothly, advocating for his idea. His eyes widened, gratitude and admiration mingling with surprise. For the first time, she recognized that asserting boundaries could ripple outward, empowering not only herself but others. The pinnacle of Part 2 arrived the evening Emery returned home to find a familiar shadow in her driveway, Vanessa's SUV, again parked in violation of her personal space. Emery didn't hesitate. This time, she was prepared. She called the police and watched from her car as her mother, father, and sister attempted another incursion. Vanessa, clutching her purse dramatically, cried, "I'm just trying to help my family." "You're trespassing," Emery said, calm and deliberate, showing the officer her security footage on the phone. Every attempt to manipulate, every intrusion, every copied key, and every fabricated story played back in precise timestamps. Caroline stepped forward, her voice faltering. "How could you call the police on your own blood?" "I don't care what anyone else thinks," Emery replied. "I care about myself, and I think this ends today." The officer escorted them off the property again. The realization hit Emery like cold clarity. Her family had never valued her independence. All those years of obedience, sacrifices, and guilt, wasted. By the weekend, Emery was methodical. She met with Dave, a family lawyer friend, and drafted a formal cease and desist letter, warning her parents and sister of legal consequences should they continue harassment. Emery organized her documentation, bank statements, birthday expenditure comparisons, security footage, and correspondence. She had built a fortress around herself, not just walls and cameras, but facts, evidence, and unshakable resolve. Even as they tried escalating via social pressure, friends, neighbors, religious advisors, Emery remained unshaken. Pastor Williams arrived at her door one afternoon, Bible in hand, offering spiritual guidance she hadn't requested. Emery calmly refused, repeating the words that had become her mantra: "Boundaries are not betrayal." She learned to separate manipulation from reality, to trust her judgment over conditioned guilt. Every attempt at coercion was cataloged and stored. Every boundary maintained was a victory. Emery Vaughn awoke to the familiar morning light, but the warmth that usually accompanied it was absent. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of legal letters, police reports, and unrelenting family interference. She had thought the cease and desist letter would bring clarity, but the shadows of her parents and sister still lingered. The cottage felt secure, yet each sound outside her window reminded her of the lingering threat. The first sign of escalation came in the form of a carefully worded email. Vanessa had sent it to Emery's workplace, disguised as a concern for Emery's well-being and family obligations. The message was meant to pressure her into attending another manufactured emergency. Emery read it once, filed it, and moved on. She was learning that her power lay not in responding emotionally, but in exercising control calmly. That afternoon, as she was pruning her garden, her phone buzzed with a text from Dave. "Mom and Vanessa are requesting a mediated discussion at a neutral location. They say they want to resolve things peacefully." Emery hesitated. Part of her wanted to finally hear them out, to see if reason could exist in this tangled web of manipulation. But another, wiser part reminded her of the pattern. every attempt at peace had been a trap. She replied succinctly, "I will attend only if the meeting respects my boundaries. Any attempt to cross them will end contact permanently." The agreed location was a quiet cafe, its small size ensuring privacy. Emery arrived early, folder in hand, documenting every interaction. When her parents and Vanessa appeared, they tried to settle into familiar postures of authority and theatrical concern. But Emery was no longer the frightened daughter she had once been. Vanessa opened the conversation with a carefully practiced wail. "Emery, we just want to help. You've always been so stubborn, but your family only wants the best for you." Emery took a deep breath. "Vanessa, this isn't about stubbornness. This is about boundaries. For decades, you've crossed them, my home, my finances, my privacy. I'm done allowing that." Her mother's eyes flickered with disbelief. "We were only trying to provide for you, to keep the family together. By controlling my life? By undermining every choice I've made? That's not care. That's possession. And I'm done being possessed." Emery's voice was firm, unwavering. She placed her folder on the table, sliding sections of documented evidence across to the center: security footage stills, bank records, birthday expense comparisons, screenshots of GoFundMe attempts, and unauthorized communications with her mortgage company. The cafe fell into tense silence as the truth unfolded in cold, undeniable clarity. Even her father, who had always wielded authority with effortless confidence, faltered under the weight of the evidence. Her mother's face paled, and Vanessa's practiced outrage crumbled into helplessness. "Do you understand now?" Emery asked, her tone calm but steel-edged. "I've built a life that is mine. You cannot manipulate it, control it, or erase it. I am stepping forward, not away from you, but away from this pattern. My boundaries are non-negotiable." Her parents opened their mouths, but Emery raised a hand.
"No.
"I will not debate morality, loyalty, or what's expected. I've spent my life bending to your will, and it has cost me everything. I'm done." Returning home after the meeting, Emery felt the first true weightlessness she had experienced in decades. Her cottage, once a battleground, now felt like the sanctuary she had dreamed it could be. She reviewed her security footage, ensuring every measure she had installed was functioning. The walls of her home, once a mere structure, now symbolized safety and autonomy. The phone rang. Michael, the landscape architect she had been seeing, called to confirm their weekend hike. She smiled, realizing that personal connections, nurtured on her terms, were now possible without guilt or compromise. In the following weeks, Emery began the process of moving forward. She listed the cottage, confident that it would sell quickly. Friends and colleagues offered support, celebrating her courage. Even distant relatives reached out cautiously, curious about the changes, acknowledging the long-overdue truth. The tides were turning, not against her, but in her favor. Vanessa and her mother continued to test limits, sending messages or attempting minor intrusions, but Emery's resolve was unwavering. Every attempt was met with documentation, legal measures, or simple refusal. She was no longer negotiating from fear or obligation. She negotiated from strength and self-respect. The final confrontation came subtly. Her mother appeared at the front door one morning, pie in hand, attempting charm and coercion combined. "Emery, let's talk. Just for a moment. It's your favorite cherry pie." Emery regarded her calmly, the years of training in manipulation clear on her mother's face. She accepted the pie, not as a concession, but as a transactional act.
"Thank you," she said.
"But boundaries are still in place. This doesn't change them." Her mother lingered, eyes darting to the security cameras, uncertainty breaking through rehearsed confidence. Emery realized, with a quiet sense of satisfaction, that control had finally shifted. She no longer feared the consequences of asserting her rights. Months passed. Emery's new life took shape with intentionality. Her garden flourished, walls adorned with memories of her own choosing, and every room reflected her tastes, not inherited expectations. Her career thrived as she embraced opportunities that had once felt impossible under familial pressure. Michael remained a gentle presence, supporting her without intrusion. Friends shared dinners and celebrations, laughter filling the spaces that had once echoed with conflict. And for the first time in her life, Emery didn't apologize for prioritizing herself. A year later, Emery stood at her front door, sunlight painting the garden in warm hues. She clutched a basket of freshly picked strawberries, savoring the sweetness that had always eluded her. Her phone buzzed, but she no longer reacted reflexively. Unknown numbers went to voicemail. Familiar numbers received measured responses. The doorbell rang at noon. Friends arrived, no agenda but celebration, bringing apple pie, her choice, not her sister's. Emery raised her glass. To homes we build, not houses we inherit. To lives we choose. And to family, the one we define for ourselves. Laughter, warmth, and genuine joy filled the cottage. The red-painted door, symbolic of her independence, gleamed in the sunlight. No copied keys, no manipulated funds, no forced obligations. Only freedom, earned with courage, and a life wholly her own. Emery Vaughn had finally learned that standing up for herself didn't make her cruel. It made her whole.